We're used to seeing Caligula as a madman, but that word doesn't capture what actually happened on the coast of Gaul in 40 AD, because madmen act without logic. What Caligula did had a logic, a terrifying, calculated, humiliating logic. He lined up the most powerful army on earth, 60,000 soldiers, battle-hardened legionnaires who had marched from Rome to the edge of the known world. He pointed them at the English Channel, and then he ordered them to attack the water, not the British fleet, not enemy ships, the water itself. To understand why, we need to go back 2 years. Caligula inherited the Roman Empire at 24. The crowds adored him. The Senate was terrified of him. And for a brief moment, he seemed like exactly what Rome needed after decades of paranoid, reclusive rule under Tiberius. Then something happened. Historians still argue over what: a near-fatal illness, a psychological collapse, a deliberate political transformation. Whatever the cause, the man who emerged from that sickbed was not the same man who had entered it. He began executing senators for sport. He appointed his horse to public office, not as a joke, but as an insult, to show Rome that even an animal could do their job. He declared himself a living god and demanded to be worshipped as one. And then he decided to conquer Britain. On paper, it made sense. Julius Caesar had attempted it a century earlier. Augustus had planned it and abandoned it. Britain was the great unfinished business of Roman ambition, the island at the edge of the world that kept slipping through Rome's fingers. Caligula assembled the largest invasion force Rome had mobilized in a generation. He marched them north through Gaul. He built siege equipment. He constructed a lighthouse on the coast, a massive engineering project, visible for miles out to sea. Everything pointed toward a historic crossing. Then, on the morning of the invasion, he stopped. He rode his horse to the shoreline. He looked out at the channel, and he gave an order that no Roman general had ever given, that no general in the history of recorded warfare had ever given. He ordered the attack, not on Britain, not on any enemy visible on the horizon, on Neptune, god of the sea. The trumpets sounded, the legionnaires raised their javelins, and 60,000 soldiers of the most disciplined military force the ancient world had ever produced stabbed the waves. The water, predictably, did not surrender. What happened next is the part that gets left out of the history books, because it doesn't fit the simple narrative of a crazy emperor. Caligula declared victory. He walked along the shoreline and personally ordered his soldiers to collect seashells. Not metaphorically, actual shells, plucked from the beach, loaded into helmets, stuffed into armor, piled into carts. He called them the spoils of the conquered ocean. He ordered them shipped back to Rome as war trophies to be displayed in his triumph. Then he gave his soldiers military decorations, real ones, the same medals awarded for battlefield valor, for stabbing water. Every historian who has written about this moment has called it insanity, and perhaps it was. But consider the alternative interpretation, the one that makes it even more disturbing. Caligula had a problem. He had marched 60,000 soldiers to the coast of Gaul and then decided, for reasons we'll never fully know, not to invade Britain. Maybe the logistics weren't ready. Maybe the weather was wrong. Maybe he received intelligence about what was waiting on the other side. Maybe he simply changed his mind. But Roman emperors did not retreat. Roman emperors did not back down. Roman emperors certainly did not march the entire army to the coast and then turn around and go home empty-handed. So he invented a war he could win. He picked an enemy that couldn't fight back, that couldn't humiliate him in return, that couldn't send ambassadors to Rome to dispute the outcome. He picked the ocean. He declared war on a god. He won. He collected the trophies. He went home. Whether that is madness or cold political theatre is a question worth sitting with. The seashells arrived in Rome. The Senate, who had spent years navigating Caligula's increasingly violent moods, did what the Roman Senate always did when faced with something incomprehensible. They voted him a triumph. The formal military parade through the streets of Rome, reserved for generals who had conquered new territory. Some senators objected, not loudly. Objecting loudly to Caligula had a short career path. The triumph was eventually cancelled, not because of the absurdity of the seashells, but because the Senate quietly realized that displaying them publicly would invite questions they didn't want asked. Caligula was assassinated 8 months later. Praetorian guard officers stabbed him in a corridor beneath the palace. His wife was killed. His infant daughter was killed, her head smashed against a wall. The assassins were thorough in a way that suggested they had been planning it for a long time. The Senate declared a decree of damnatio memoriae, condemnation of memory. His statues were torn down. His name was chiseled off public inscriptions. Rome tried to erase him. They failed. Because 2,000 years later, we still know his name. We still tell his story. We still argue about what he meant, what he was, whether he was a madman or a mirror held up to an empire that had already lost its mind. The seashells are gone. The lighthouse on the coast of Gaul is gone. The 60,000 soldiers are gone. But the image of an emperor pointing at the ocean and ordering it to submit has never left us. Maybe because we recognize something in it. The desperate human need to declare victory over things we cannot control. To collect the trophies of battles we invented. To go home and call it a triumph. Caligula just did it with an army. If this kind of story, the real history that sounds too insane to be true, it is what you want more of, subscribe. Every video goes deeper into the moments history tried to forget. The next one might be even harder to believe.